where if you do something and take the aspects of Japanese culture, the extreme attention to detail, the extreme work ethic, the team building, and then you add a few things of differentiation, that you can do things quite outside of what you normally do, and you can work with a partner even if you normally haven't, and you can do things in a different way. And your Japanese partner has come to these conclusions on their own, rather than you trying to tell them, well, I know how to do that. And I think one of the most classic examples of that from recent Japanese history is the development of the company Sony, because you're talking about a company where when Ibuka-san and Morita-san created the Sony Corporation, they leapfrogged above all of their competition by doing something that was very un-Japanese. They brought something which was not their development, but which was a product that they were able to license from Bell Labs in the United States, and then use it in a very different way. Because up to that point, the transistor had been used only in military applications, and they decided that not only were they going to take a product which they had to pay licensing fees for, they were going to take it and apply it to many different uses. And this is something, and again, you leave this, you kind of step back from the conversation, and you see people looking at each other, you see your partners having conversations with each other, and they say, absolutely. This is one of those ways that we can use differentiation to become better than where we are. And this goes all the way back to the opening of recent Japanese history, where the morning before Perry's fleet arrived, the generals of the Tokugawa shogunate believed that they, after 250 years of being a closed culture, had the best of everything. Because we know we're the best, right? We know our weapons are the best, our kimono are the best, our building techniques are the best. And then you wake up and you look out and you see steel ships firing exploding shells. Can you imagine how different you have to think within the next decade to then turn your entire country around to become a world power? And that's one of the things that sometimes the Japanese don't recognize about themselves. And I'm not trying to give advice to any Japanese out there about how to be a better Japanese, but sometimes it's about seeing the forest for the trees. That the greatest advances that the culture and the Japanese companies have made, when they've taken all of the things that they do extremely well, and then just fine-tuned it slightly with techniques or products or innovations from other parts of the world. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about differentiation. And that, as a communicator, as an intercultural communicator, you can do that anywhere in the world, not only Japan. When it comes to learning not only those cliche things, which everyone knows from an in-flight magazine before you land in Moscow or Tokyo or Dubai, but just scratching a bit deeper, showing the people that you are someone who it's going to be worth their while to get to know and to do business with. And he's not the same, or she's not the same as just the last person I met. And I can invest that time and that energy and then build the relationship the right way, where it's about keeping small promises and then keeping slightly larger ones and slightly larger promises until you're basically have a level of trust that I've been thankfully been able to do different iterations of business with even different companies with Japanese partners that I started working with more than 10 years ago. Because there's an assumption now that, well, Frank understands us. When you go from Martin-san to Frank-san, and when the communication becomes very personal and not only business-wise, that they're able to assemble a group of people to listen to whatever pitch and whatever product you're bringing because you've proved yourself to them successfully before. And then it becomes much easier because you've developed a level of trust. And it's about bringing that innovation. And I'll maybe conclude my portion with a colleague of mine at the same time that we were doing business in Japan for the first time was bringing another Hungarian company to Japan. There's a very famous internationally known salami that's sold globally that they were trying to import to Japan for the first time. And the discussion was with one of the companies that made the lunch boxes that were sold on the Shinkansen and in stalls before you get onto the Shinkansen. And they went through a lot of effort, and at the end of the day, the Japanese partner decided they didn't want to go forward with the business because if they were going to use the Hungarian salami in one of the 2 or 3 or 4 sandwiches, they were going to have to tell one of their Japanese suppliers, that they're not going to use their product. So no matter how good your similar product is, bringing it to the Japanese market, it's going to be difficult or impossible to supplant the Japanese partner. So it's all about bringing something which is new and innovative. And now I'm working in the engineering services industry, and we specialize in circular engineering projects, and where we're doing either water reuse, we're doing energy projects, we're doing construction projects, something as small as a campus or as large as an entire section of a city. And it's all about bringing a new way of constructing these buildings. We're using less manpower, less energy, therefore less embedded carbon footprint. And even though Japan has some of the best general contracting construction companies and the best urban planning companies in the world, this is something that didn't exist in Japan before because they used more traditional techniques. And therefore, we were able to get traction because this is something we were able to do, but decide to do it with the Japanese partner rather than going it alone, rather than going around myself and explaining why we're great, and then we would bring a bunch of American or British or German engineers to then do it in Japan. No, we find a Japanese partner and work together with them, teach them how to do what we know how to do, and then they're the ones who have their own deal flow, their own relationship with the Japanese end users, and then they're able to do that going forward. And just as much in Japan as we're able to do it with Japanese partners in other parts of Asia. And because that's an important business line, I think, to anyone who wants to work with Japanese partners, is the fact that they're in certain countries, the Japanese investors and end users and constructors and design firms and import-export are very, very strong. And many times your Japanese partner may even want to try out a piece of business with you first, for example, in Indonesia or Vietnam, before they're going to bring you to their key partners in Japan, because if it all goes south in one of those other countries, it's more difficult for them to walk their way back from a relationship with a local partner there than it would be in Japan. So this is what I mean by differentiation, and what I mean about sort of listening and acting different and scratching farther below the surface than it would take in an ordinary conversation.